chittasya padena vacham malam sharirasya cha vaidyakena yopakarottam pravaram muninam Patanjalim pranjaliranatosmi. I prostrate with folded hands before Patanjali, who benefited mankind by delivering yoga for mind, grammar for speech, and by removing impurities of body through medicine. So now we will continue with our study of the Patanjali Yoga Sutra. In the last class, we have entered into the topic where in Yoga Sutra, the concept of Ishvara, the concept of God, has been introduced. So after describing the various samadhis by controlling the mind, which can be attained by controlling the mind, all those meditations speaks of focusing the mind on the mind itself and gradually having control over the mind. And that way, gradually, we can rise to the higher and higher rungs of the ladder of spiritual evolution, ultimately leading to the asampragyata samadhi. While studying that, we found that it is quite abstract. For most of us, it may not be up to our temperament to really approach that procedure of meditation. We may find that we are not up to it. And then the question naturally comes, is there no way out? Have I to be equipped with that type of skill, with that type of temperament to pursue my spiritual journey? Or are there some alternative? It is in this context the concept of Ishvara, the God, comes in the Yoga Sutra. And we find in a very wonderful way the concept of the divine grace has been described in the Yoga Sutra, in a few sutras that will be just discussed after the very first sutra, where just the option has been given, Ishvara Pranidhana, the 23rd sutra which we were studying in the last class, the 23rd sutra of the first chapter, that Ishvara Pranidhanat Va. Va means or. That if you find that the meditation, the process of concentration, which has already been described, is too abstract, yes, there is a way out. That is Ishvara Pranidhana. So again, we may mistake the word Pranidhana as meditating on God. No, it's actually not meditation. If it's meditating on God, then the process is almost as tedious, as challenging as concentrating on the mind itself. When concentrating on the mind, the thing which I have to do is to stop the vagaries of the mind and to focus on the mind itself. The mind becomes the object of meditation. And now if I say, okay, it is too difficult, try to have the form of the divinity in your mind and focus on that. We all know that's also quite challenging. It's almost the same challenge just to concentrate on the mind. Ishvara Pranidhana actually is not meditation on God. As in the last class we were discussing, the word Pranidhana is a technical term which more appropriately means a type of surrender to Ishvara, to God. What that surrender means again? Pranidhana specifically means what actually entails surrender to the divine, to always have the feeling that whatever I am doing in my life, in whatever situation I have been placed in my life, and as per the situations of life, whatever may be my responsibilities. In the words of Swami Vivekananda, I seek not, I avoid not. I take them to be something which is ordained by the divine for me, for some greater purpose, which I don't know. With the limitation of my understanding, I don't know. There's a higher purpose. He has placed me in a particular situation in life to take care of particular duties and responsibilities. I seek not. I'm not ambitious that I have to just go on excelling. I take that. I neither seek nor do I avoid. I don't try to find out some security zone, some comfort zone by avoiding that. That's the thing. I take it as the promptings of the divine, and I do it assiduously with full devotion. Whatever the responsibilities are, I just do it. I do all my uh, assignments with a full dedication, with full perfection, as an offering to the divine. When I'm offering something to the divine, I never offer something which is rotten, which is not the best quality. Whenever I have to offer something to the divine, we always opt for the best. So here also, my responsibilities, whatever it may be, the morning I go for my job, whatever may be the work, at the beginning of the work, I just think once that yes, after all, I cannot avoid this. God has kept me in this situation. Let me just take it as an offering to the divine. All the activities which I do perfectly, and then I offer it to the divine. After all, He has placed me in this situation. He knows best why He has kept me in this situation. It is beyond my understanding. I do it with a sense of offering. And when you offer something, of course, you can never expect something in return. There cannot be any merchandise. There cannot be any bargaining in the real love, in real offering. I never do it with any expectation. So I never, once I offer, there is no sense of expectation. Whether the work becomes successful or unsuccessful, it results in some happiness or it results in some suffering, whatever it may be. I know it for certain. I have offered it to the divine. I have no expectations. So whatever the result entails, I am least bothered about it. I'm indifferent about it. Once I have done, I have offered, and there my duty ends. So as we were saying, that if we can just maintain this type of attitude in life, most probably without doing any specific spiritual practice, just with this type of attitude, just with this little uh, feeling that I offer everything to the divine and I expect nothing. If I can maintain this type of attitude, which has been spoken of as the pranidhana, as a perfect surrender to the divine, the spiritual journey becomes something spontaneous. It's not that by the grace of the Ishwar, by grace of God, I will realize the spiritual illumination, the highest illumination, spiritual illumination, that without following the prescribed path, I suddenly realize in a flash. No, it doesn't happen that way. All the steps which has been spoken of, which will be spoken of in the yoga, the Ashtamarga, the 8 paths, which will be spoken of, it will come in the 2nd chapter. They all will be followed spontaneously by the grace of the divine, leading to the ultimate spiritual realization. And as a part of our discussion, we were saying that what's the psychology behind it, how it happens. Actually, in the spiritual journey, the biggest clue is, what is the clue? In the words of Sri Ramakrishna, when someone asked Ramakrishna, when shall I be free? His reply was, when I cease to be. So that's the clue of the spirituality, that the sense of this limited I, if I can just get rid of it, immediately I get established in my real nature. It is my clutch, it is my holding, it is my grasp to that limited I, to this limited psychophysical existence, which is the cause of bondage. Out of ignorance, I take this to be the real me and I'm grasping on it. If somehow the grasp can be loosened, if I can let go of that grasp, then nothing has to be done. As in the last class, we were giving that example. Suppose you have climbed up a tree and you are holding onto one of the branches. Now, to fall, no effort is required. You just have to leave the hold. The gravitation will pull you down. Similarly, God's compassion is not conditional. It's not that only the one who has surrendered to him, the God's grace is there. And the one who is not devoted to him, has not surrendered, the God's grace is not there. God's grace is not conditional, it is unconditional. Just like the gravitation, it is acting on all. Just the way the one loosens the hold of the branch, the gravity acts on him, and effortlessly, without any effort, he has to fall. Similarly, if we can leave the clutch of the I, of our psychophysical existence, the limited individuality, immediately the grace now works on me and it takes me to the spiritual evolution by following all the process which has been enunciated, described in the Yoga Sutra. It happens. So that's the clue behind the surrender. You just leave the hold. Let the grace work on you, and the spiritual journey will become something effortless, spontaneous. And that was in the last class, that's the thing which we discussed. Now the big question comes that, okay, I've understood that surrender to God is something which can enable me to evolve spiritually spontaneously, almost effortlessly. But who is this Ishvara? That the one to whom I am supposed to surrender myself, pranidhana, then the abhidhyana, the grace will ensue. Now, who is that Ishvara? So now the Yoga Sutra in the few sutras, in the next succeeding few sutras, will describe the concept of Ishvara, that who actually is Ishvara. So now we will continue with sharing the screen to just refer to the next few sutras, which describes the concept of Ishvara as has been described in yoga. So now, who is Ishvara? So now, who is Ishvara? Now, already we have been describing that in the Yoga Sutra, there's the idea of duality. The ultimate reality is dual, the Purusha and the Prakriti. The conscious principle which acts on the Prakriti, and from that, the entire creation is projected, the conjunction of the Purusha and Prakriti. Now, where does the Ishvara lies in this duality? So Ishvara also is one specific Purusha. There are innumerable Purushas. Each and every individual is a separate, segregate conscious existence as per the yoga. There, the yoga and the Vedanta varies. We won't go to the discussion now, but that's the basic difference. Where in Vedanta we find that the conscious principle is non-dual, but in yoga, the Purusha as innumerable. Each and every being is actually a discrete unit of that conscious principle. Prakriti is one. Prakriti is like the breeding ground. Each and every Purusha is like a seed. So Prakriti is one. Purushas are innumerable. Ishvara is also a Purusha, but he is a unique, Purusha, who is totally different from all other Purushas. So, what are the characteristics of Ishvara which distinguishes him from all other individuals, all other Purushas? By what characteristic he is being distinguished? What makes him Ishvara? So, the first characteristic in the 24th Sutra has been described. What it is? Klesha karma vipaka ashahi aparamrishta purusha vishesha ishvara. So here the terms are there. Aparamrishta. Aparamrishta means untouched. Untouched by what? By klesha karma vipaka ashahi. Klesha means afflictions. Karma means all the actions which enunciates from those, results from those afflictions. And the result of that karma is the vipaka. And that results in the latent impressions, the ashray. For all other Purushas, we have to go through this process till we reach liberation. But that the Ishvara is a Purusha who never was touched by all these klesha, karma, vipaka, ashray. So just a literal translation is the one. Ishvara is a special Purusha, Purusha Vishesha. Vishesha means a special. He's a special Purusha who is untouched by, aparamrishta, untouched by the klesha, the afflictions, by action, karma, the result of action, vipaka, or the latent impressions, ashray, thereof. So now we have to understand these terms to really understand what actually is klesha, karma, vipaka, ashray speaking of, with which we as an ordinary being are bound, and Ishvara is never touched by them. So we have already discussed in some previous class, but as the context arises, in short, we will again discuss this concept, the things by which we are bound. We will follow this chart to understand that how we get bound. Now, the conscious principle, when it is bereft of its conjunction with the Prakriti, it is something which is perfect, which is beyond all wants, which is beyond all fears, which is perfect in itself, never wanting anything. It is in enjoying its own liberty. But because of ignorance, when it comes in association with the Prakriti, then what happens? Then the afflictions are bound to follow. As in the Yoga Sutra, later we will come, there are 5 kleshas. The one follows the other. What are these kleshas? Avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. Avidya is the ignorance. The moment the Purusha comes in conjunction with the Prakriti, the Purusha sees its reflection in the Prakriti and immediately gets deluded by taking the reflection to be the real. And now what happens? By seeing its reflection in the Prakriti, it takes the reflection to be real. And it gets identified with the Prakriti. And now what happens? From that, the asmita first comes. From that ignorance, the conjunction happens. And the first product of it is asmita. From avidya comes asmita. What is the asmita? Now seeing the reflection in the Prakriti, it thinks, I am that. This sense of I am that small reflection. I forget my real nature. That my sense of amness in the reflection and the Prakriti is the asmita, gives the sense of ego. And from that ego, what happens? The other 3 kleshas follow. They are raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. What are they? Raga means attachment. Dvesha means hatred. Abhinivesha means fear, specifically fear of death. Now, what actually is speaking of? Forget about a human being. Just take a small microbe. In a petri dish, in your science laboratory, when the science teacher is just asking you to see through the microscope what's there in the petri dish, you may find that there are a lot of randomly moving particles. You may think they are all inanimate. They are just randomly moving particles. They have no life. And now what the science teacher does, he puts a drop of nutrient in the center of the petri dish. Now you find among all those randomly moving particles, a few have gathered direction. They're moving towards it. So now you understand that all are not inanimate, all are not some inorganic things. There is some life there. A few have gathered direction. There is no more random movement. They're moving towards it. So the moment the conscious principle gets attached to even to that small microbe body, ego, the sense of asmita comes. I am this small microbe. And from that what comes? Raga. Anything which is favorable to the existence of that small body, anything that is pleasurable, anything that is suitable for the existence of that, it is drawn towards it. It moves towards it. So that is raga. So that from that, the movement speaks of karma. From the attachment comes the movement towards it, the karma. Or if it is instead of a drop of nutrient, if I would have just dropped a drop of toxin, just the opposite. We would have find the same microbes which were moving towards it, now just moving away from it. So what has happened? The same thing. If I find that the external stimuli is not favorable for my existence as a limited psychophysical being, as I am now identified with that, I find that it is not favorable for its existence, and now my amness is associated with that, I move away from it. This speaks of the fight, this fight and fright response. That I am fright or fight, that I am just afraid of it. If I am having sufficient strength, I try to get rid of it. And if I don't have sufficient strength, I try to run away from it. So this is the dvesha and the abhinivesha. Dvesha is the hatred, the thing which is not favorable, I try to get rid of it. And if it is too strong, like the death is always there lurking behind our existence, we are always running away from it. That is abhinivesha, the fight and flight response. So dvesha and abhinivesha. So now it is clear that how these kleshas come. And from the kleshas, what comes? The actions. As we have seen even in the small microbe, the nutrient were drawing them towards that. The toxin was repelling them from it. So this is a very simple example. This thing gets complicated as we evolve. Innumerable karmas comes out from this innumerable, the vrittis, the stimulus. And we more and more develop a complex personality with all those kleshas. All those kleshas, innumerable karmas are enunciated from the cause of the klesha. When the klesha is the cause, the effect is the karma. And now, once I do an action, it's not forgotten. The klesha, I don't forget. It remains as a bhoga sanskara. Anything I enjoyed, it remains in my mind. Once I've enjoyed a delicacy, for the time being, it may appear I have forgotten. After a month, again I see that. Just see that. Immediately I will find that I am developing an attachment for it. I just want to have it. I want to grab it. So what has happened? It wasn't forgotten. It was there as the subconscious impression in my mind as sanskara, which comes back again as memory. And then again, I go for it. The karma again enunciates from that. And the more this bhoga sanskara results in bhoga karma, the more and more we have sanskaras, karma sanskaras, bhoga sanskaras, which remains in our mind. They're not lost. They're always there. There's all these bhoga sanskara, the karma sanskara, they all settle down. They all settle down in our mind, sediment in our mind as vasana. There are innumerable vasanas in our mind. So now we have already understand what is klesha, what is karma. The next thing is the ashaya and the vipaka and the ashaya. What are they? Now all these vasanas which are in my mind, they don't find expression at a time in one life. As per my life, a particular quota, a particular bundle, a particular package of vasanas, as it filtrates through my mind and finds expression in my conscious mind to describe my personality. To give an example, that we also give that example when we were studying these sanskaras in some class, that in the previous classes. What is the example? Suppose it's a fact that in the very first birth we are not humans, as per the scriptures has spoken of, that after innumerable births we have at last attained this human birth. In all those births, as animals, most probably, just take an example, we were some grazing animal. And now, as a grazing animal, the green grass was our food. It was our staple food. We really liked it. We salivated seeing the green grass. So it is there, if it is all there in my subconscious mind as vasana, why in the human birth that seeing the green grass, I do not salivate? I'm supposed to salivate. So here the Yoga Sutra have really dealt with the psychology in a wonderful way. They say, no, only those vasanas which are appropriate for the human birth, they will find expression. The others are there. It's not that they're not there. They remain hidden. If my mind is like a dark wall, in the night you enter a room, the wall is dark, then what's my conscious mind? In the dark wall, I focus with a torch. The torch light illumines a particular part of the wall. The remaining part of the wall still remains dark. So each and every birth, the conscious principle is focusing only a particular part of our mind. And that becomes my personality in that birth. The others are there. If you just change the focus, the other part will be illumined. So only particular vasanas in a particular birth, as per our predominant tendencies. If I have, suppose, a liking for music in this life I've developed, and most probably I didn't get quite favorable circumstance to really culture it, but my liking, that sanskara, as it has the preponderance, it has the intensity, high intensity, it will make me to take birth in an environment where this music, learning music, will be favorable. The conditions for learning music will be favorable. I will be born in such a family, in such an environment. So this karma has this two type of effect. It creates sanskara in one hand, that is something individual, and it has a collective aspect. What's that? That suppose that, as in the last, when we were taking these classes, we told that a student who is good in all the subjects, because of his good grades now, when he is going to enter the university, now has a choice, a huge choice. He or she may now choose to go to the medical college. His or her grades permit to get admitted there. Now, what happens? As a student in the school, he or she had the liking for all the subjects, the vasana, the liking for all the subject was there. The moment he or she enters the medical college, now the vasana, only the liking for the biological science, that finds expression. All others are hidden. So now we will understand the vasana. And not only that, what has happened? The moment he or she goes to the medical college, the entire medical college the building, the huge infrastructure, the professors, the laboratories, the hospital, all those things are not the direct result of his karma. That is a collective aspect the society has created. His or her liking gravitates him or her, takes him or her to that situation. So these are the two things. One is the vasana, other is the karmashaya. Karmashaya means ashaya, the receptacle, in where you are gravitated. So the karma finds expression in two ways. It creates tendencies, that these sanskaras, and it creates the ashaya. It's the ashaya is already there. You are gravitated there. How you are going there? Because of vipaka. Among all your likings, the resultant of that, which finds preponderance, you are drawn because of those likings to a particular type of circumstances, to take birth in a particular jati, in a particular species, with a particular span of life ayu, and particular quota of experiences of happiness, sorrow. It is all as if fixed. You will find even in the modern this medical, the biological science, they will say that at certain age, however you may try, you may be a person who has good hygienic habits, you exercise, you maintain proper diet. With this, you may delay the process of aging to a certain extent, but it cannot be totally stopped. The genes are all programmed. At a particular time in life, they start degenerating. With all our attempts, we may just slow down the process a bit, but it has to degenerate. So it speaks of the ayu. We will have this particular span of life, this particular quota of our experiences. So that's how we are bound by our actions. We have to take birth because of our actions, and that has been enunciated in this sutra. This for all other purushas. What's the cause of our existence in this physical plane? This klesha, karma, vipaka, ashaya. Now, Ishvara also can, what you say, that have an existence. In the fourth chapter, we will study the concept of nirmana chitta. He can create a mind out of compassion, nothing else. That you need some type of emotion, some type of feeling to really create the mind. So the Ishvara has no, as such, the selfish motive. It is only out of compassion he can have a nirmana chitta, he can create a mind to help others. And so his birth or her birth actually is not directed by klesha, karma, vipaka, ashaya. He is untouched by them. He is more likely like an actor. So who is Ishvara? Ishvara, like an actor, is never identified. In a theater, the actor is enacting the role of certain character. He's just enacting. The audience may see him to be suffering or enjoying, but actually he knows it is just an acting. It has nothing to do with all the experiences which the particular character of that role is depicting. It's not all those things are actually the real feeling of the actor. He knows he's just acting. So Ishvara, as he's aparamsht, untouched by klesha, karma, vipaka, he's like an actor who is never identified with his actions. Hence the question of klesha, karma, vipaka, and karmashaya never arises. There's no question of that. He's just acting out of compassion. You will find in the life of all the so-called incarnations, divine incarnations, this idea is very well represented through their life. In the life of Buddha, when he reached illumination, the first thing that came to his mind, that what's there to hold on in this life? He just had the feeling to just go beyond the body, to leave the body. The next moment the thought came, that compassion arised. That if I don't relate this, my realization, to the world, there are so many who are actually waiting for it. That this realization may not help all. Those who are totally engrossed with the sense pleasures of life, they have nothing to do with it. But there are many who have somehow found out the insufficiency of it and have developed a craving for a higher life. If I don't go back to the world and relate my experience, these people will be deprived. It is out of this compassion Buddha is coming back. You will find in the life of Ramakrishna how nicely he is describing of the three friends who were passing through a road, and there was a huge wall just by the side of the road, and the three friends were curious to know what's there beyond it. So one of them got up the wall with the help of a ladder. The other two were waiting to know that what is there on the other side of the wall. When he reached the top of the wall, these two friends found he is highly ecstatic, full of joy. They were asking, what you have seen that makes you so happy? But that friend couldn't resist himself. He simply jumped to the other side without relating what he has seen. Now the second friend got up. His plight was also the same. He was so overwhelmed with what he saw, he jumped to the other side. Now the third, the last one who was remaining, he also climbed. He also felt like jumping to the other side. But he knew that if he jumps, no one will be there to relate to the world what has been seen. What a nice example Sri Ramakrishna is giving. So this is the compassion which helps them to come down, which enables them to come down to relate. They have no selfish motive. So they come down, they behave like ordinary human beings. In Bhagavad Gita also you will find that Arjuna is saying that I thought you to be my friend, but you are the Ishvara. The same idea is here. He is enacting the role out of compassion so that he can relate the other dimension of existence, which can really give us fulfillment. So though he is beyond the klesha, karma, vipaka and karmashaya, ashaya, he is enacting in such a way that as if he is also affected by them. It is just an acting, but actually he is beyond that. He is aparamrishta. He is never touched by them. So now in the Bhashya, very nice concept you will find. What a wonderful concept yoga, Sutra is bringing to describe the concept of Ishvara. So now in the Vyasa Bhashya, very nice distinction has been made. That even a liberated Purusha, that if we are saying that the Ishvara is beyond Klesha Karma Vipaka Ashray, out of compassion he comes to instruct the humankind, then what about some liberated Purushas? There are some liberated Purushas who also can just come down with the Nirmana Chitta out of compassion to help the humankind to proceed in the spiritual path. Then what's the difference between these two? So now the distinction is that all other Purushas at some point of time was in the domain of ignorance. Through their spiritual practice, they came out of it. There are three types of transmigrations, like as we have seen, the Prakriti Lina, the Videha, the transmigrated individuals. So all these individuals, they can cut asunder their bondage. They can go to the state of liberation. So they were actually bound at certain point of time, and they have liberated, and they have been liberated because of their spiritual practice, because of the illumination. And now, out of compassion, they are also helping the humankind to reach that spiritual goal. Then what's the difference between those liberated souls and Ishvara? The difference is Ishvara, through all the kalpas, all the past cycles of existence, through eternity was never bound. All other Purushas at some point of time were bound, they got liberated, but Ishvara is the one who was never bound. He's always free, not only in this cycle, even in the previous cycle of existence, in the previous kalpas. He is the one always there as the free one, as a free soul, never touched by this klesha karma vipaka ashaya. He is there only to help out the other Purushas who have developed that urge for liberation, to help them out from their bondage so that they can also attain the state of liberation. So that's the first distinction. There are many Purushas who have attained the state of liberation, cutting asunder the threefold bondage. You know, we have already studied, we are not discussed the Prakriti Leena. It's quite high state. It's just like the heaven, the Videha. They are like in the heavenly existence, but they're still bound. Though it's a very high existence, but still they have maintained the individuality. So there's the bondage of Prakriti Leena, Videha, and ordinary human beings who are just transmigrating in this physical plane. So these three types of bondages are there. There are many who have cut asunder all these three. Thus liberated persons are known to have the previous state of bondage. So they were having a previous state of bondage. But Ishvara had no such bondage in the past, nor will he have any in the future. Ishvara is always free. So that is one of the distinctions between Ishvara and Purusha. Another distinction is that other Purushas, though they may be free, but they are not omnipotent, all-powerful. Ishvara is all-powerful. He has the capacity to, as if mold the entire, this way the creation projects itself, to mold, to give it expression in a particular way, to project the creation in a particular way. Ishvara has that power. Other Purushas don't have that power. Though they become almost like omniscient. They become all-knowing, but they don't have the power to act on the creation or change it in any particular way. So Ishvara is supreme and omnipotent. His excellence is unsurpassable by any other Purushas and is without an equal. Why this has been thought of? Why Ishvara should be omnipotent? So this is the thing which the Yoga Sutra, Yoga speaks of. If there are two Purushas who are having the same power, then their will may contradict. You cannot think of a car with two steering wheel and with two driver. It cannot be, you cannot have a car with the two steering wheels and two driver, because one may think of going to the left, the other may think of going to the right, and the car will be in a total jeopardized state. So the creation will be jeopardized if there are two omnipotent Purushas. So Ishvara is the one who alone has the power to rule over the entire creation. The other liberated souls may be all knowing, but they don't have the power to rule over the creation. So Ishvara alone is supreme and omnipotent. His excellence is unsurpassable by any other Purushas and is without an equal. Because if there were two persons with equal eminence but contradictory desires, their directives will be inoperative. So very nicely, with a very common reasoning, the yoga philosophy is bringing the concept of Ishvara. So the first characteristic of Ishvara has been described in the 24th Sutra. He's a Vishesha Purusha, he's a special Purusha who is beyond the Klesha Karma Vipaka Ashaya. For cycles after cycles of creation, he is the one who is never touched by the afflictions, by actions, by the results thereof. He is always untouched. He is always beyond that. So that's the first characteristic. And from this characteristic, from this omnipotence, which results from this characteristic, the omniscience, that comes from this, which has been described in the next sutra. We'll go to the 25th sutra to understand the next characteristic of Ishvara. What is that? Tatra nir atishayam sarvagyatva vijam. So, sarvagyatva means omniscience, all-knowingness, sarvagyatva. So, in him, that all-knowingness finds expression, which in others is just a vision, in others is just a germ. So, in him becomes infinite, that all-knowingness. Tatra niratishayam sarvagyatva. In him, that all-knowingness becomes infinite, which in others is just a vision, which in others is just only a germ, is just a small seed. But in him, it becomes something infinite. The knowledge is infinite. Niratishayam sarvagyatva. So what actually it is speaking of? To understand this concept, let us refer to Swami Vivekananda's definition of education. What is education? Education is the manifestation of perfection already in man. So it's a very wonderful definition of education. That generally we have an idea that education means collection of facts, collection of information. But Swamiji is saying no. Education is the manifestation of perfection already in man. So what he's saying actually, that no knowledge is there outside which we are gathering. All knowledge is within. It is the ignorance which doesn't allow us to manifest that. You remove the ignorance, the knowledge is already within, that manifests. So it is something which has to do with this definition, tatra niratishayam sarvagyatva vijam. So what actually it is speaking of? That Prakriti, when the Purusha comes in association with the Prakriti. Now, if you remember that example, if Prakriti is like the breeding ground, the soil, Purusha just take a seed of a particular plant, say the mango seed, the stone of the mango. The moment you plant, the entire breeding ground has infinite possibilities. There are innumerable nutrients there, all the minerals, everything is there in that soil. But the mango seed, what it does, as per its particular type of constituent, it allows only particular minerals, only particular, there are so many minerals, only particular minerals to be drawn in, assimilated in a particular way, and then it sprouts out as a mango tree. Or it may be a banana plant. And that's why we say that banana is rich in potassium, such and such plant is rich in phosphorus, or what is rich in iron. Say this pumpkin is rich in iron. What has happened? From where that iron came? Did it came from the seed? No, it came from the breeding ground. As per the seed, as per its nature, particular type of nutrients are being accumulated, are being drawn from that same soil, and it finds expression after being assimilated, it finds expression as a particular plant. So for us, all the knowledge which we manifest is because of the seed. The mind with a particular bent, with particular temperament, with particular liking, only draws in from that nature, only particular type of tendencies, and particular type of knowledge finds expression through that particular person. To give another example, in the internet nowadays, you can download so many things. Anything you search, that as if it can give you infinite knowledge. But what happens with us? Only that particular knowledge which is of our interest, which entails our profession, which we need for our profession. Suppose I'm a doctor or I'm an engineer, particular type of things I have to search in the internet, I have to download them. So my knowledge bank is limited by the profession, by my tendencies, by my temperament, and that creates my knowledge. But the internet, in the internet, have that infinite possibilities. I limit myself as per my tendencies. as per the klesha, karma, vipaka, as per my, if as being in a particular profession, my klesha, karma, vipaka is different from another person who is in a different profession. And we are creating our own bank of knowledge. But if we would have searched, we would have got all other knowledge. So that speaks of that the infinite knowledge in the Prakriti is there. We, because of our klesha, karma, vipaka, ashaya, only can manifest particular type of knowledge. Ishvara being beyond the klesha, karma, vipaka, as he has no uh, attachment to particular type of tendencies and temperaments. He is just like an actor. He can access anything and everything. And that gives that infinite fund of knowledge to the Ishvara. So this is the basic idea behind that all-knowingness. So you'll find a wonderful idea that the all-knowingness, which is possible in every being, but it is in the germ form. Because of our klesha, karma, vipaka, because of our biases, we have only access to particular knowledge, and that constitutes our personality. But Ishvara being beyond all bias, the entire thing is something which can be accessed by him. It's something like the example we can give. You know that in the present day, when I am going to the computer, I have some limited access to some information. But nowadays, there is something called PRISM that is an acronym. It's by which the government, to synthesize and process the information, they can go and just access the server of YouTube, the server of Apple, the server of Microsoft. They can just access that and can get all the data, which I cannot do. So Ishwar is like the government, which can go and access the data from the entire internet. But we have a limited access. We cannot just break the password of other and just go into the informations of the other person. But the government, because of some national interest, can do that. So nowadays, you will find that that has become a huge issue, that our privacy is gone. But I'm giving that example not to censor it or not to encourage it, just to say the concept of Ishvara is something like that. He has access to everything. For us, we have the limitations. So with this, just let us go to the text which we have just described here to describe the sutra. To understand the idea, let us take into consideration Swami Vivekananda's definition of education. Education is the manifestation of perfection already in man. Prakriti, the basic ingredient behind our cognitive faculty, is immeasurable. The more we manifest it, the more we are knowledgeable. If there is nothing to obscure its manifestation, if the biases are not there, as per our karma, ashaya, these biases are not there, then that knowledge becomes immeasurable. There is nothing to obscure God's knowledge, as he is klesha, karma, vipaka, ashaya, aparamrishta, as he is untouched. So there is no particular bias to keep his knowledge limited into a particular domain. It can be just in anything, it is limitless. So that's why God is omniscient. So here we have given an example that a student has excessive attachment for video games, and that becomes detrimental for his studies. Most probably he is very intelligent. He or she is very intelligent. He and she can really acquire knowledge. But because of that raga, the tremendous attachment for the video games, all other knowledge is getting obscured. They're getting obscured because of this attachment. If he could have got rid of that, easily he could have excelled his studies. So that speaks of getting rid of the attachment. The more we are less biased, less obsessed with particular type of raga dvesha, the more our knowledge fund becomes something, the more it becomes manifested. It is already there. So that's the example. A student's excessive attachment to video games proves to be detrimental to his or her studies. Though the student has the potentiality to acquire more and more knowledge and excel in studies, his or her raga, that is a klesha, raga is a particular klesha, for video games, becomes an obscuring factor for manifesting his or her potential. So now you will understand that what it is meant by Tatra Niratishayam Sarvagyatva Vijam. So again, the question between the difference between Ishvara and the enlightened yogi with respect to Sarvagyatva or omniscience. So the same thing, all the bias falls off for an enlightened yogi, the one who has reached the highest spiritual illumination. For him also, all the biases has fallen off. So then what is the difference between Ishvara and the enlightened yogi? So this is a very wonderful concept which has something to do with the next sutra. That yes, one who has reached enlightened also becomes omniscient. He also becomes Sarvagya. He also, with the help of Nirmana Chitta, he or she can help out the humankind to get that spiritual knowledge. Like Ishvara, they also have the power. But the question comes that the liberated soul with the Nirmana Chitta can go on helping the others who are still in this physical plane, going through the process of transmigration of birth and death, up till the end of this cycle. When this kalpa ends, then the liberated soul, there is no comeback in the next cycle. He is liberated. He may continue with the Nirmana Chitta in this cycle. Now, at the beginning of the next cycle, who is there then to instruct the creatures who are in the bond of ignorance? Who is there? There must be the spiritual knowledge must be there at the beginning of each and every kalpa. So here yoga again brings a wonderful idea that this Ishvara, he never merges, he never is there to be totally merged. He is there for each and every cycle at the first teacher. He is there as the first teacher at the beginning of each and every kalpa. Not like the other liberated souls that at the time of dissolution, they shut their mind forever. Doesn't happen for Ishvara. Ishvara, the compassionate one, for each and every kalpa, has his Nirmana Chitta, with the help of the Nirmana Chitta, goes on helping out the humankind to attain liberation. So that's the idea, which idea leads to the next sutra. So we will just go through this, our explanation to just have a synopsis of what we discussed. So although Ishvara has no need of his own, the motive of his action is to be found in his compassion for living beings, in his desire to save humankind who are caught up in the vortex of worldly existence. He assumes Nirmana Chitta out of compassion to instruct them in knowledge and piety. But it is not Ishvara alone who can create such an Nirmana Chitta out of compassion. There are yogis who out of compassion, instead of shutting out the mind forever, goes on working with Nirmana Chitta to liberate creatures from the snares of birth and death by giving them proper knowledge. However, such yogis also shuts out their mind forever at the time of dissolution of the creation. Then who is there to teach at the beginning of each kalpa or cycle of creation? It is Ishvara, as has been indicated in the next sutra. So we will go just state the next sutra as a conclusion to this class. Very nicely, it has been told in the next sutra that Sa Purvesham api Guru Kalena Anavachhedat. Without any interruption. Avachheda means interruption. Anavachheda means without any interruption. He is Purvesham api Guru. He is the teacher of even the ancient teachers. In each and every cycle, he is the first teacher of all the ancient teachers. He is the first teacher. He is always there to instruct at the beginning of each and every kalpa as the first teacher. So Purveshamapi, all the gurus, all the illumined soul whom we know to be the one who is illuminating the entire humankind. He, the Ishvara, was there as the instructor of the teachers, of all the teachers whom we know to be the illumined soul. When Jesus says, I am the Son of God, that's what it means. The God Son of God. He himself is there, Jesus is there to instruct the mankind. He is a teacher, but God is the one who is a teacher of the teacher. He is always there. He to instruct the teachers at each and every kalpa. He is a teacher of even the ancient teachers, being not limited by time. The former teachers of knowledge and of piety are limited by time. But he to whom time as a limiting factor is not applicable was the teacher of the former teachers, as he was present with his full powers in the beginning of the present cycle, so he was at the beginning of past creations. And he will continue to be the teacher again in the future cycles to come. So that's how that he's a Purveshamapi Guru. He's a teacher of all teachers in all the cycles to come. So in a wonderful way, you will find that yoga is bringing in the concept of to such an Ishvara, when we can surrender, just the surrender, how it helps. In your computer, you have some problem with the software and you are not a software engineer. You try your hard, nothing comes out. At last, you leave all your attempt and take the help of the one software engineer who knows the programming. You just stop your effort and say, please help me out. He knows the programming. He comes and just help without your effort. He just takes you away from all the hurdles which you were facing because of your lack of knowledge. So Ishvara is there, the ultimate programmer. He knows the entire programming. He is there as the control of it. So just refuse to him. He can take you out of all the hurdles which has been created by the lack of, by the limitation of our knowledge. So that's what the wonderful concept of Ishvara, which has been spoken of in these three sutras. The concept of Ishvara will continue, that how the Ishvara is nomenclature, what's his name, how we have to think of him. All these wonderful concepts will come in few more succeeding sutras. And what's the result of Ishvara Pranidhana? How it helps us to get rid of all the hurdles, of the obstacles in our spiritual journey. What all hurdles are and how they're removed by the Ishvara Pranidhana. They will come in the succeeding few more sutras. So again, in the next class, we will continue with this wonderful concept of Ishvara and the practice of Ishvara Pranidhana. With this, we stop our discussion today. Thank you all. Namaskar.
Thank you. Namaskar, Swamiji.
Thank you,
Swamiji.
Swamiji.
Namaskar.
Thank you, Swami.
Namaskar, Swamiji.
Namaskar.